Hello YouTube, it's finally here. You all have been waiting for it. I'm probably one of the last guide maker to make a guide for the Unity Cup. For many reasons, I have thoroughly researched and attested my claims and the flowchart so that most players, the masses, you can win the Unity Cup finale more consistently, but also set new records for all of your Umas. Maybe even getting your first S rank Uma, no promises here. Now, this video is part of my Umamusume Masterclass series and intended for people who are still confused about the Unity Cup or still don't understand what exactly to focus on in this new career scenario, even after watching the plethora of guides out there. And it's also for people that do know how it works and looking for some in-depth information just to get the edge over everyone else, or maybe you are here because you just like the way I explain things. Whatever the reason may be, I'm happy to help you succeed. A quick glance over the table of contents. Everything is timestamped in the description for quick access. First, I will try my best to summarize all the basic information about the Unity Cup for people who still haven't gotten their hands on it or waited for it. I will include some extra information in here that most people seem to overlook, also for the sake of completeness, since this is a masterclass after all. Second, I will refer to the original support card mastery video that I have done previously, and I will expand on it with important information for the Unity Cup. Third, we will take an in-depth look into what exactly we will want to focus on, and following that, I will walk you through the new training flowchart that a lot of people have requested. With that, I hope most players will be able to streamline their runs and build habits to help them gauge good and bad turns more frequently. And lastly, I will add a replay of an example career run where I use the flowchart for demonstration to successfully build a great Uma. The Unity Cup is a new permanent Umamusume career scenario centered around team-based competition, introducing fresh mechanics for training stronger horse girls. Unlike previous scenarios, you now train toward two major events, the team-focused Unity Cup finale and followed immediately by the classic Ura A finale. Let's introduce the fixed support cast that will accompany you in this game mode. First, our familiar director Akikawa from the Ura A finale scenario has been called abroad. In her place, we now have her strict substitute, Riko Kashimoto, who oversees the event in her own way. You can build friendship with her for end-of-career stat and skill point bonuses if you use her PAL support card. The other familiar face you can build friendship with is our supporter Etsuko Otonashi, the reporter. Her role hasn't changed. She still appears at the end of the first turn after your debut race, boosts certain trainings by adding extra stat gains, and provides additional stats and skill points at the end of the career. Additionally, with the November 11th balance update, she received a new effect. When you train with her, she now has a chance to cure the slacker condition at random. Lastly, we have the original game characters Little Cocon and Bitter Glass, members of Riko's team first, who are simply waiting to crush you in the Unity team finale. You cannot build friendship with them, nor do they appear as support during training sessions, and of course they don't, because they are your rivals after all. Speaking of supports and the power of friendship, you will always be joined by our 4 Nakamas at the end of turn 3, unless one or more of them are already in your support deck. These are Haru Urara, Taiki Shuttle, Rise Shower, and Matikane Fukukitaru. This is great early on because you will need to build a full team roster that covers every race distance. More on that very soon. These 4 ensure you always have at least one Uma who can run a sprint, mile, medium, long, or dirt. If one of them is in your support deck or is the Uma you're training, you will unlock a special team name option in early September junior year. The name you pick determines the gold skill you earn after defeating Riko's team in the Unity team finale. Here's what each of them offers. Haru Urara will suggest the team name Carrot Pudding for the gold skill Indomitable, Taiki Shuttle Hop Cheers for the gold skill Mile Maven, Rice Shower Blooms for the gold skill Cooldown, and Matikane Fukukitaru for the name Sunny Day Runners for the gold skill Clairvoyance. Among these, Mile Maven is usually the strongest choice if you're training a Mile Specialist, otherwise the default team name, Team Carrots, may be your best option as it grants No Stopping Me, the gold upgrade of Nimble Navigator, which became very strong after the recent balance update. More on that later. With that, I will wrap up this broadcast and scenario characters section, and now on to the main features of the Unity Cup. Before I will start with the most obvious features, I would like to shortly talk about the base training values for this scenario compared to the Ura A finale. The top image shows the training values for the Unity Cup when unmodified, and the bottom image the base values for the URA finale respectively. As you can see, training in Unity Cup facilities have dropped by a couple of points, which would usually make a noticeable difference when training. However, because of how the Unity Cup works, stats are being supplemented with different kinds of training and elements, which we will cover now in the following. Let's start talking with the end in mind, the Unity Cup finale. To participate in the Unity Cup finale, you will need a full team. What makes this scenario unique is that your support cards actually become members of your racing team. They will run in the team races with you, with the only exceptions being pal cards like Tazuna or Riko, who do not participate. Your team roster is filled with your support cards, the 4 fake scenario characters mentioned earlier, and random Umas who join your team every 6 months after each team race. Also more about team races in a moment. Important, you cannot build friendship with the Umas who join your roster outside of your support deck. Each team member has their own stat line, and by the way, this is not affected by the level of support cards or limit break that you currently have, which you can view by clicking their support icons during the training or by opening the team edit screen. These stats matter because the combined total average of all team member stats determines your training facility levels for every individual stat. This is a major shift from the former scenario. Facilities do not level up by training in them after 4 times, which was the way before. Their levels are entirely gated behind total team stats, including your trainees' stats, which implies that raising the team stat has a high priority next to raising the friendship gauges for friendship training early on. Balancing out these two things at the right time in the right amount is what makes this scenario a challenge and will ultimately determine the quality of your trained Uma. All the training facilities begin at level 1. Once a stat reaches rank E, the corresponding facility upgrades to level 2. This should be one of your early goals before the first team race at the end of junior year. From there, hitting rank C brings up the facility to level 3, rank A to facility level to 4, and rank S facility level to 5. Because speed is the most important factor for winning team races, you should generally prioritize raising the speed rank, which is not hard to do since we do want to train speed more often than the other stats. If you manage to push the overall team rank to S, you will trigger a special event where Tazuna awards the gold skill hint. It's on. If the Uma you're training is one of the 4 scenario characters, the hint is given at level 3 instead of level 1. The maximum stat cap for the Unity Cup is currently 1200 in all stats, identical to URA finale. Future updates will increase these caps, but not in the immediate future, so keep that in mind. But by then, we will probably have even better scenarios giving even better stat builds. Okay, now that we know the team stats are important to raise facility levels, how exactly do we do that? We do that through Unity training. Unity training triggers when you train with support members who have the white flame icon on them. Training with white flame support grants an increase to all stats of every Uma who participated, which feeds directly into facility leveling and progress on the Spirit Burst gauge. And extra stats on top of the trained stats, for example triggering Unity training on Wit, also gives an extra amount of speed on top of increasing all stats of the Umas that had the white flames on them. If you train with 2 or more white flame supports, you also get some bonus stats on top of the trained stats for your trainee. When a support's Spirit Burst gauge reaches stage 4, they gain a chance to appear in training with a blue flame icon. This signifies that a Spirit Burst is available. It provides a noticeable stat boost for your trainee. It consumes slightly more energy unless bursting happens in wit training. In this case, it recovers more energy instead, and it stacks additively with other Spirit Bursts. Not multiplicatively, so it does not yield extra stats if you stack 2 or more Spirit Bursts at the one training facility. Each Uma can only trigger 1 Spirit Burst per career run. Once triggered, that Uma is marked with a little blue flame icon. Triggering a Spirit Burst significantly increases that support's individual stats, which in turn accelerates the leveling of training facilities even more and grants you a random skill hint based on your trainees' Uma's aptitudes. The total bonus stats you can get out of Unity training cannot exceed 50, and the maximum stat gain for regular training is still kept at 100. Team races occur every 6 months, once at the end of every year and once in late June right before every summer camp, for a total of 5 races per career run. Each time, you must pick one of 3 opponents listed from strongest, top to weakest at the bottom. Before team races, especially for the fourth and last race, it's recommended to visit the team edit page. The auto-assign feature here is usually fine, but in certain cases it is not quite reliable. Your trainee, Uma, or certain supports may be assigned to the wrong distance if no other runner fits. That will probably lead to a guaranteed race loss if we cannot slot in a slightly better Uma in there. If your Uma has an S aptitude in a distance, for example long, but is actually built for another distance, for example mile, the game will always auto-assign them to the distance with the highest aptitude, which can mess up some rosters. This can happen with Umas who run multiple distances during the career and when their legacies happen to boost multiple aptitudes. The rule of thumb for choosing an opponent is to try to target matchups where you see at least 2 circles and 1 triangle or better on the previous screen. Winning races is quite important as it also boosts all stats of every team member in your roster, which can help you snowball into leveling up facilities quicker. If your odds look weak, reorganizing your team lineup can dramatically change the preview results, turning X symbols into triangles or circles and sometimes converting a likely loss into a comfortable win. However, keep in mind, even with multiple circles or even double circles, RNG can still cause unexpected losses. Beyond raising team stats for higher facility levels, your other major goal here is to build a team strong enough to reach team rank 5 or higher before facing Riko's squad. Achieving rank 5 grants an additional plus 50 to all stats in the final race, which makes defeating her team much more easier. To guarantee reaching team rank 5 or at least rank 4, which still grants the maximum bonus, always choose and defeat the strongest, so the top opponent in each team race. You may choose the middle opponent once in the first 4 team races without losing eligibility for the max stat boost. This routing ensures you will reliably finish at rank 5 or better, unlocking the full stat bonus for the Unity Cup finale. But of course, if you're ranked worse than what is recommended, you can still totally win the last race depending on the growth of your team by that time. If you encounter the team Turf Queens in the 4th team race before the finals, it's recommended to avoid them. They are unusually difficult to beat even when the matchup preview shows favorable circle ratings, so selecting the middle opponent here instead is often safer. But of course, I am not stopping you to try and beat them. As for the last part of this section before we move on to support cards, let's quickly review the fixed events you will encounter in the Unity Cup scenario. Most events function just like they do in the URA finale, so we will focus only on the elements that are notable, different or mechanically important, while excluding story content and the mandatory team races. Here are the key scenario events. After turn 2, your support card Umas join your roster. From this point on, you can begin leveling them through White Flames. Team rank and roster editing become available starting on day 3. After day 3, the 4 scenario characters are added to your main team unless they are already part of your support deck, and after day 4, Riko Kashimoto begins appearing in training, allowing you to build a friendship with her. An important convenience: unlike in the URA finale, you do not need to satisfy Riko's green friendship requirement to unlock the unique skill upgrade during the Fan Fest in senior year April. In Unity Cup, this condition no longer applies. In late September junior year, you select your team name, which determines the gold skill you will earn after beating Riko in the Unity Cup finale, as discussed earlier. And in late November senior year, you receive your Unity Cup skill based on whichever team rank stat is the highest. If multiple stats are tied, the skill is chosen randomly among them, and if you have triggered 10 or more Spirit Bursts, you will receive the gold skill version of it. Standout skills include the Power and Guts Unity Cup gold skills, with both of which activate in the late race and perform very well. The speed version triggers mid-race, which may be useful for front runners. The regular non-gold skills are generally not worth getting. The Unity Cup finale takes place in late December senior year, where you will face Riko's team. Winning grants additional stats and a gold skill hint tied to the team name you selected earlier. This section will expand on my previous video that is part of my masterclass for the URA finale. The video support card mastery is linked in the description. Everything I said there is still valid and true, and if you're a beginner, you might want to watch that first. Otherwise, I assume you know what support cards are or what they do and what you want to look out for in a card. Here with the Unity Cup, there are a couple things we need to talk about. One obvious and major aspect of the Unity Cup is that you cannot brute force your way into high facility levels anymore by just spamming speed with high specialty rate speed cards. It only works to some degree, but not very well. We will have to think about it differently. Just to recap, the leveling system of a training facility has now been decoupled into this team stat system, not by training in it 4 times like in the URA finale scenario, meaning the average stats of all your team members decide the facility levels of a stat, and you level your team's stats by triggering Unity trainings. That means clicking trainings with White Flames and Spirit Bursts. With that in mind, here are the following changes. I started working on this video before Unity Cup got released for global, and therefore definitely before the balance patch on the 11th November 2025. The JP server never had this patch during the release time of Aoharuhai, the Japanese Unity Cup, so a couple of things were not possible there which are now possible here. One of the biggest changes among many great quality of life updates is the rework and balancing of positioning skills, as well as the rework of guts like JP has it currently. To make better choices of support cards you would want to use, it is very helpful to understand some of the game mechanics. Let's break down the relevant ones first. For one, Umas will now spread out more horizontally during the final corner into the last spurt. Certain skills that require some Umas to be in front of you during that part of the race, like dodging danger, are changed from having to be blocked from front and side to front or side, which makes it much better. So lane movement speed is a thing to consider now, and Nimble Navigator, specifically the gold upgrade Now Stopping Me, has therefore now become a top tier skill, which by the way everyone gets when choosing Team Carrot as the team name. Guts now finally works the way it was originally intended during Uma's Global's release. It directly affects velocity during the last spurt, and with the new dueling mechanic where Umas with similar last spurt speed fight for position and influence each other's performance, Guts has become much more interesting. However, it's still not as impactful as the three core stats: speed, stamina, and power. With Guts being a thing now and Guts partially training speed and power too, it is a very viable strategy to focus on it during training with high Guts growth rates to hit high count White Flames, to additionally have a way to increase the speed and power stat of all team members, which in result can lead to a faster leveling of the training facilities theoretically. Aside from those changes, the way the Unity Cup functions means you will gain far more hint discoveries, though they are much more random. This is important. It becomes significantly harder to target a specific hint from support cards the way you might have in older scenarios like the URA finale. In exchange, however, you will accumulate a large number of hints overall, and some of them can even be distance related skills such as medium corner or medium straightaways, even if your deck contains no support cards that normally provides those hints. Because of this, combined with the new scenario mechanics, we can draw two key conclusions. First, yes, you should still try to use support cards with skills that match your Uma's intended role if you're training for Champions Meeting. That hasn't changed. Second, however, the scenario has become far more stat centric. That means that training effectiveness and to a lesser degree flat stat bonuses are extremely valuable. You will switch between facilities more often than usual, focusing less on your standard priority stations and more on hitting high White Flame counts and triggering Spirit Bursts whenever they appear in good spots. Because of the constant switching between facilities in some cases where priority facilities like speed are not great but high count White Flames on Guts is, floating support cards that can provide strong stat gains anywhere become incredibly effective. Examples include the free-to-play Haru Urada Guts cards with 15% training effectiveness, the MLB Biko Pegasus SSR speed card with 20% training effectiveness and a lot of base speed, and the SSR Fine Motion Witch card, especially the MLB Fine Motion, who is arguably one of the best cards for this scenario overall. The MLB Fine Motion fits the scenario so well because she covers multiple roles at once. A strong floating card with excellent 15% training effectiveness, provides practice perfect in her training events, which is extremely valuable in heavy training scenarios as it reduces failure risk, and she is a wit card, which brings several benefits, and that is by the way true for most wit cards. First, better energy recovery through wit training. Second, hitting multiple White Flames on wit is effectively free since there is little to no risk involved. It also boosts the training partner's speed, helping you level the speed facility faster. And lastly, wit Spirit Bursts are also very strong bonus source of energy recovery, which will come in handy many times. The only drawback, however, is that wit builds require multiple wit cards to truly shine, since their effects scale multiplicatively. Some Umas can also have growth rates that force you to bring extra stamina or speed cards, making it harder to fit in a full 2-speed 3-wit lineup. And with that said, yes, wit is great here, however, you still want to majorly train in speed and sometimes a bit in stamina/power facilities, as that is where you will get most of your stat points, and it will also make your team flat out stronger compared to guts and wit, resulting in faster leveling of the training facilities. Unless your Uma has 20% growth rate in guts, then it might work as well, as you will see in an example I will show later. Wit will work great as a complement to allow you to do more if you only need to focus on 3 stats, usually speed, power, wit, with power or stamina legacies. Once you have to factor in more stamina, the choices of support cards will be a little bit more comprehensive, as now you would have to balance speed, stamina, and power instead, not leaving much room for wit. That is something we already had to think about when prepping for the URA finale, but the wit choice here in this Unity Cup will carry a bit more weight. Alright, let's talk about Riko. We know that this scenario is very training focused because training facility levels are locked behind Unity training or triggering white flames and spirit bursts. That requires a good amount of energy and risk management, which PAL support cards excel in and what they are made to do in the first place. The SSR Riko PAL support card or a MLB rare Riko card will also work fine, will help you with all of that. Very welcoming random mood up events, good recreation events, and of course training risk reduction, which is very good to see in a conjunction with multiple friendship training and or with spirit bursts in the lower 40% energy area, which happens moderately frequently, which you do not want to miss out on. Before going on recreation with Riko, you would have to unlock it via the unexpected side event that can trigger randomly after a training session. This event will give you 3 choices, with only the middle choice guaranteeing you to unlock recreation with Riko. The bottom option will end the chain event and the top option can be both. It's very random, however not worth it. Not factoring in any other events, just the 5-stage recreation chain events plus the unexpected side event will net you stats majorly in stamina and guts, 132 energy and 6 mood ups on demand in total. Depending on the friendship level you build with Riko during training, she will also give you up to 25 stamina and guts plus 30 skill points that are affected by race bonus, so around 37 to 40 skill points realistically just from the end of career event. If you have been wondering how strong or usable the MLB rare Riko card is, it is slightly better than the LB0 SSR Riko and worse than the LB1's SSR Riko, and still does exactly the same in game. So if you don't have the SSR Riko yet, but have a rare card at max limit break, you can totally use that card instead. Now, for the last part of the section, this might be relevant for some people who would love to min-max in this scenario. I would like to talk about support card optimization. Specifically, I want to talk about the fact that support cards you choose and the ones that will mostly join randomly during career will participate in team races. Since you only need to win 3 out of 5 races in each team race, you can build a deck with Umas that can cover different distances even if some of them overlap. Yes, you can win races early on by ignoring this entirely and just using the fixed scenarios characters you receive at the start. However, keep in mind that these characters don't build bond gauge, meaning they won't trigger friendship training. This becomes important if you decide to use an Uma outside of your deck as the ace for team races, maybe because no other Umas fits the role. If that off-deck Uma needs to become stronger to secure 3 wins, you may start prioritizing their white flames over everyone else's. The problem is that training with an off-deck Uma early on means you might miss out on building crucial friendship gauges with the Umas in your actual deck. Those early friendship boosts matter a lot. This also affects your decision making when comparing equally sized white flame stacks, especially when the training facility itself isn't the deciding factor. In short, during the early stages of a run, be aware that strengthening an off-deck ace can disrupt your bond building and slow down your overall development. Most of the time though, the game will naturally guide your training choices, speed is heavily prioritized, and your team members tend to level fairly evenly as you progress. However, if you notice a situation where 3 white flames in the speed facility belong to weaker characters than the ones in power, and a team race is coming up, you can choose to train power instead. Even if speed would give you slightly more stats overall for your own trainee, strengthening your better performing Umas can help convert those prediction triangles into circles, win the upcoming team race, and level your facilities faster. If all of that sounds confusing, don't worry, this level of micromanagement is completely optional. It's a very niche optimization for players who want to squeeze out a little bit more consistency from the RNG, and in 99% of cases, you will perform perfectly well without doing any of this. Still, since support card selection is something we can fully control, I wanted to mention the option. And with that, we have wrapped up the Unity Cup additions to my previous support card mastery video, and on to the next section. Alright, this one can be a little bit technical and long for some people's tastes, so the TLDR version for this section is prep with strong legacies plus Riko/wit support for consistency. Wit builds are the easiest, but any Uma with non-wit builds also works fine if you follow the value system. Focus on high value training first, so Spirit Burst, Friendship Training, White Flames early on, and the pure stats later. Keep energy energy and mood healthy, skip optional races, and trigger Unity training often. Alright, and with that said, here we go. Some of you have asked for this, and since the URI Finale flowchart proved extremely helpful for beginners last time, here's a new version specifically tailored for the Unity Cup. There's a good chance some of you skipped straight to this section, or you're one of the few who actually watched the entire video up to this point. If you're one in the latter group, thank you very much. I hope everything has been helpful so far. And for those who jumped ahead, no worries. I will make sure this section covers everything you need, even if it means repeating a point or two from earlier in the guide. You're all covered. Now, this is the reason why it took so long to make this video, aside from the editing nightmare that this project turned into. I went through a lot of test runs using this flowchart, different support card setups, different running styles, different distances, different UMAs, you name it. In every run, I tweaked one small variable at a time while keeping everything else constant to see what genuinely made a difference. You can probably imagine how many hours disappeared into this process, but hey, I survived. This flowchart went through many revisions. Earlier versions look completely different with extra branches and alternative paths, but after all that refining, this is the version I'm most satisfied with. It's much easier to understand after a few uses, even if it looks a bit overwhelming at first glance. Big question, do you need this? Absolutely not, especially if you played this game for a longer time now and know what to do. However, it does help newer players immensely, and it does help people who want something that they can refer to if they are second guessing a particular training choice. So in a way, it might be for everyone. Before we dive into the flowchart, and please don't try to use it just yet, let me say a few things first. Depending on your legacies and support cards, numbers will vary for every player, that is a given. My testing setups involved 5 to 6 star and 9 star borrowed legacies for speed, stamina and power depending on the UMA I trained. I always use the SSR Riko Pell support card at LB0, Kita-san Black at LB3 and MLB. Performance were quite similar, and a MLB Sweep Tosho and or a MLB SSR Biko Pegasus depending on the fit, and the rest of the cards were a wide range of supports depending on the UMA's growth rates. I have tested most viable combinations of 1 Pell, 2 to 3 speed, and any mix of wit, power, stamina, and yes, guts too, all in single, double, or triple copies. A completed run typically ends with a total stat sum between 3,900 and 4,100, so roughly 4,000 with average RNG. Usually that lands you at A+ rank, and whether you reach S rank mostly depends on the quality and quantity of skills you can buy at the end. So yes, you can absolutely reach S rank with this setup. Most players will manage to do it, however, with wit-focused builds, since they naturally allow for more training sessions and generate significantly more skill points, which are essential and otherwise hard to accumulate without racing a lot. With that said, wit is incredibly strong in this scenario, but that does not mean you can't train powerful UMAs without heavily investing in wit. In fact, some of the better performing builds are the ones that take advantage of an UMA's 20% growth stat, stacking 2 or 3 support cards of that type alongside Riko and 2 speed cards, yes, with no wit cards at all. An UMA with a 0% growth rate in speed or wit will naturally struggle a little bit more to hit ideal stat lines when running a wit build. However, if you lean into their strength the way I just mentioned and adjust your approach accordingly, they can still become incredibly strong through alternative paths. For example, take my Gold City build, who has 20% growth in guts and 10% in power. The setup I used was Riko, Kita-san, Sweep Tosho, and yes, 3 guts support cards paired with a 9-star speed legacy and a mixed 3-star speed, stamina, and power legacy. That particular run was very rough. During senior year, she missed multiple double and triple rainbows at very low failure rates, which easily costed her a couple of triple digits in total stat points. She also struggled through her usual training locks like a gold ship has, and had to run the medium and long races in her career while trying to build her for mile distances. But even with all of that working against her despite bad RNG, the final build still turned out surprisingly solid. Okay, enough for forward, now let's take a look at the flowchart. The flowchart has 2 main parts. The left side covers everything related to career preparation. That means the decisions you make before starting the run, such as choosing legacies and support cards. The right side focuses on everything relevant to training during the run. Let's move through it from left to right, starting with the legacy tips. For legacies, aim for strong blue sparks, 8 or 9 stars per side. Power is typically the default stat choice here, unless you're running 2 or more power support cards. In that case, you will naturally get more power through friendship training, since higher specialty rates for it will make you focus on those more, making power inspirations less necessary in the long run. Stamina legacies are usually only worth bringing for very specific reasons. A common case is when you need to reach certain stamina thresholds for mile, medium or long races, even if you're mainly training a sprint or mile Uma like King Halo or Gold City, and you would prefer to dedicate all your support cards and training focus to speed, power and wit. In that situation, passive stamina from legacies can help you hit the minimum requirements without diverting training away from your main stats. The Riko Pal support card helps with that as well, as she can give a good amount of stamina and guts throughout the run with her recreation events. However, if your Uma already has 20% stamina growth, stamina legacies become fairly inefficient. In that case, it's better to bring stamina support cards and train it directly rather than relying on inspirations. This is also why most long distance Umas don't need heavy stamina legacies. One side at most is enough, because you will generally prefer to allocate those blue sparks to speed or power instead, depending on what you lack with the most, and bring stamina supports only to capitalize on the growth stat. And of course, if you're training a pure sprint or mile Uma who only runs sprint or mile races throughout the career, then you don't need stamina legacies at all. Power training and optionally training during summer camp, if needed, will give you more than enough stamina to cover those short distances. Same with guts. If you want to build a lot of guts, you most likely do that anyways with an Uma that has already a good growth rate for that, and therefore you bring guts cards, train it yourself and complement your stat line with either speed or power legacies. And the same for wit. Wit cards are great if you can use them, and you will never need to inspire wit ever, since you will be pressing the wit button a lot, especially when using triple wit builds. Instead, you will usually always lack one of the 3 speed, stamina or power, and you would rather use your legacy slots for that. Pro tip, a 9-star legacy roughly adds the equivalent of plus 10% growth rate for that stat. So if your Uma has a low speed growth and struggles to reach 1200 speed, you would either increase the number of speed supports, or that's when you would use strong speed legacies. However, in most other cases, you might overcap in speed, so be thoughtful with your choices here. For champions meeting builds, red sparks are a little bit more important than blue sparks, as that S rating in any distance means you will get an extra boost in speed even if you have hit 1200 in speed already, which is very critical here. Distance aptitude is the only thing next to certain skills that can help you hit more than 1200 in speed theoretically and practically. Legacies don't do that, they only help you get to the 1200 limit and will not push you beyond it. So you will want to aim for the 1200 speed and S in distance if you are really serious about champions meeting. It might also be a requirement to trigger the dueling mechanic against other strong Umas, as they will run in similar conditions. If you're wondering whether the URA finale scenario is still worth running, the answer is yes, but only for specific purposes. URA 8 remains valuable for building legacy Umas, since its scenario spark is still excellent and skill hints are far less random due to the lower number of random hint procs. This makes it especially useful if you're farming for something like the groundwork spark. For frontrunner legacies, URA is also noticeably faster to complete. For everything else, especially when building champions meeting Umas, you will be running Unity Cup, at least for now. Next tip, support cards. We touched on this earlier, but I wanted to highlight Riko once again because she makes your runs far more consistent. You will burn through a lot more energy in this scenario, so bringing a PAL card is a very good idea. If you have an MLB rare Riko, you can safely use her. She's a bit stronger than the LB0 SSR Riko, though still weaker than the LB1 SSR version. If you can, aim for 35% or more race bonus, even if we don't plan to run a lot of optional races. That will turn your plus 3s for every 1 race into plus 4s, as well as increase your skill points a little bit, and it also scales with winning the team races very well, especially when winning the last one against Riko's team. It's a minor tweak in the support deck, but it's kinda a free bonus you can actively choose to get. And the last tip here is that Wit and PAL support cards are very effective in this scenario, since it now matters less to focus on a single training facility to level them up, but instead you need to prioritize White Flames, and what better way to do this than getting them for free in Wit training. A very important reminder, Wit trains speed too, and White Flames increase all stats of that characters plus an extra for the stats trained, so it helps with leveling the speed facility as well. Also, don't sleep on 4 White Flames on Guts. That is a massive too, since it also trains speed and power. There's definitely more I could have added here, but as you can see, the flowchart is already packed and there's simply no room left. If you skip the earlier section on support cards, make sure to check it out. There is additional important info there in case you're interested. Okay, now that you know how to draw out the strengths of your Uma and have gotten the legacy support cards and the preparation out of the way, let's get started with the actual flow. The general idea for part A of the flowchart is similar to the one from my URA Finale Masterclass, where we mainly check for timing, status conditions, and energy levels, so we can get the green light to move on to part B. You might have noticed the point table on the right side of the page. I will have to explain that first so we can understand the rest of the flowchart, because that's how we will calculate the value of a training. And based on the last flowchart and heavy testing, I've come up with an improved version of gauging training values for the Unity Cup with arbitrary numbers, since Unity training adds a whole other dimension when it comes to valuing training decisions. So let's define value first. To put it simply, value in this context of Umamusume's training is the overall benefit of a training choice, taking into account both the immediate stat gains and its impact on future progression, facility levels, and potential growth. And I reiterate again, value does not only mean highest stat gain, but rather it is a degree of suggestion to guide your decision making toward the most effective long-term progression for your Uma, which includes facility growth. A good example for this are spirit bursts. For example, when you find one in a desirable training facility like speed, it may give less stat points than a decent friendship training on power that could give more stats, but it might be valued a little bit higher since it also helps with leveling the training facilities a lot, which is a good investment to make early on to make even more powerful friendship training possible. More often than not though, the training with the most stat gains co-aligns with the training value, but don't be fooled by thinking higher value always means more stat points. Among some situations throughout the career, it is definitely true for the last 3 turns of a run. During the URA finale, you do not need to care about long-term value at all, so you don't need to trigger white flames here as they have already fulfilled their purpose. And instead, you would just go for the training that rounds up your stat build the best. Let's talk about the random training modifiers first, because I think they are the most intuitive to us all. Hints, or red exclamation marks, add a small plus 0.5 in value because they boost friendship gauge early on, speeding up the start of a friendship training. After the gauge hits orange, hints barely matter for progression at all, and it also does not matter if you encounter 1, 2, or 5 hints at once, since we can only trigger 1 hint event at a time. As for anything else, the order of value, if they only appear in singles, is the following: 1 spirit burst over 1 friendship training, over raising 1 blue or green friendship gauge, over triggering 1 white flame. In frequencies of 2, friendship training and spirit bursts are valued evenly, though you might prioritize spirit bursting in the earlier game if you would have to choose between them. And from the 3rd or higher appearance count, every modifier here except for hint will add +1 to the value, rather simple to understand. When raising friendship gauge, do note that pal cards and supporters who don't raise, like Riko or the reporter Atsuko Otonashi, do not add any value specifically, as you cannot trigger any spirit bursts or friendship training off them. You could give them, however, an imaginary plus 0.1 in value, which is not listed in here since they might be relevant for some end of career stats. I will call active training modifiers everything where we, as the trainer, can influence the training values ourselves at any given time. For now, there's just one modifier, and that is giving a little bit more priority to training facilities that we really want to train in, usually speed and or wit. Later, in some scenarios where we can use items to enhance training, they would also be considered active modifiers, just to give you a preview. In the key training tips below, I've also highlighted how to assign priority or focus to a training facility. For example, an Uma that's already heavily invested in speed can gain more from high wit training, while a mile Uma who needs to tackle longer distance races but lacks stamina support cards, legacies, or growth might give plus 0.5 in value to stamina training, otherwise they might not be able to finish the career run at all. Keep in mind, giving a facility priority is only a small modifier. Most of the time, however, the training with the higher overall value will still take precedence over your personal choice. Also, assigning priority isn't something you decide on the fly. It should be planned before starting a career. Your choice depends on the Uma, your support cards and legacies, making it more of a global strategy than a situational one. Because of this, you usually won't need to change priorities often during a run, maybe only once, for example, if you happen to almost hit the speed cap by the second summer camp. Eventually, you will make choices based on your own intuition or risk management, and that's fine as long as you understand why. Here, experience helps fill the gaps where the point table cannot. And I hope the arbitrary system will serve you in making training decisions a bit more tangible. Now that you understand the point table and how values work, the rest of the flowchart becomes much easier to follow. First, check whether anything urgent will end your career next turn, such as not meeting fan requirements. Fix that first. After that, check whether summer camp is coming up. Some Umas have mandatory late June races, which can shift the last turn before camp one turn earlier, so keep an eye on the calendar. Your energy, ideally, should be as high as possible going into the camp. If it's low, you rest. If energy is good, you can take a WIT training instead. The only exception is when a very strong low-risk training option appears. Sometimes that can just be as good or even better than an average summer camp training. Then you can choose to do that. Next, handle any negative status conditions by going to the infirmary. Note that with the latest balance update, there are now several additional ways to remove conditions, though you cannot rely on them consistently. Summer camp's rest and recreation can now cure bad conditions, which is a very good addition, by the way. The top choice in the extra training event can also cure them randomly. The random fan ladder event can remove slacker. The training with reporter Atsuko Otonashi can also cure slacker. The fan fest in April senior year now sometimes removes slacker or slow metabolism, and night owl from the sleep deprived rest can now occasionally be cured by the 70 energy well rested rest. These are all very nice bonuses when they trigger, but again, don't count on them. The infirmary is still a more reliable option. Next in the flowchart, we check our energy levels once again. If it's at about 30% or lower, you do rest. That's where speed training usually hits a 27 to 29% unmodified failure rate. You can skip resting if you have an excellent WIT option, a low risk high value training valued at 4 or higher, or a recreation turn available with your PAL support, like Riko. Recreation is especially good if it also pushes your mood from good to great, while also restoring energy. If energy drops below 20%, always rest. PAL recreation won't recover enough, and you will likely be forced to rest again next turn anyway, unless you really need the mood up. Once you have checked all of the above, career requirements, summer camp timing, conditions, and energy, you can move on to the section B, the training screen. Here, the process is straightforward. Start at the top and follow the first rule that applies. If you see a chance to raise a friendship gauge valued at 3 or higher, take it. This mainly happens early in the run. Once most friendship gauges turn orange, you will skip this step automatically. Next, look for the best training option valued at 3 or higher. Best here simply means choosing the option that fits your goal if multiple trainings share the same value. For example, a 3.5 on stamina versus power. A higher value always takes priority over a tie. If you don't see any strong training options, and this happens often, do a mood and optionally an energy check. If the mood is normal, use recreation. If you have PAL recreation unlocked already and your energy is at or below 50%, choose recreation with PAL instead. PAL recreation can happen even if your mood is already at great. This check is purely about energy, and it's usually better to refill energy than waste the turn on low value training. If none of the above apply, look for the best training valued at 1.5 value or higher. Again, choose if tied, and higher value always takes priority over a tie. If even that is not available to you, follow the skip turn procedures, meaning no strong training is worth doing this turn, and the best we can do here is maintain energy or squeeze out a little bit of progression in case energy is not an issue. Early in the game, always check WIT training first to see if it can at least raise a blue or green friendship gauge. If yes, take it. If not, choose any training with value 1, not below, or default to WIT, recreation, or racing for skill points, especially when there are G1 races. And that is already the entire flowchart. Here are some extra training tips before we finish off this segment. Optional races aren't very valuable in Unity Cup. It's usually better to focus on triggering Unity and friendship training more often. Try to reach team rank 5 or better before the final race against Riko. To guarantee rank 5 or better, you need to beat the strongest opponent at least 4 times and the middle opponent at most once. Doing this earns plus 50 to all stats for the final race, making winning against Riko's team much easier. During the Ura finale, or after after the Unity Cup finale or in the final 3 turns, completely ignore White Flames because by then they have already done their job. Aim to trigger 10 or more Spirit Bursts before late November in senior year. This guarantees a Unity Cup gold skill hint based on your highest team stat or random if tied. The power and the gut gold skills are great but expensive to get. And with that, we finally reach the last part of the guide. I know it's a lot of information, but I hope it's worth it. Next, I will walk you through an example run using the flowchart and explaining my setup choices, followed by a labeled uncommented demonstration. And before I will play the final part, some last words from my end. Thanks for watching. This was a lot of work to make, and I appreciate every comment, like, share, subscribe, whatever. I hope this will help players streamline their Unity Cup runs, and I will see you soon. Also, come say hi in my streams, and bye. See ya and enjoy the rest of the video. Right, here we are on to the final part of this video. So here we have our example career run. Now, I have thought about running with a Sakura Bakshin, but I think that would make the example run a little bit too easy because she already has the 20% speed, 10% width there. So that would be a 2 speed, 3 width setup. So I would rather see if there's another Uma that we can actually train. And I thought Narita Brine is a very good example for that. So she can run mild, medium, long. I specifically want to train her for the long. She has 20% growth rate in stamina, 10% growth rate in speed. So that means we might want to bring a little bit of speed legacies here just to help her grow with the speed, since we probably only want to bring 2 speed cards anyways. So that will help her get to the 1200 speed if all goes well. So then with the 20% stamina that we really want to capitalize on, we probably want to run 2 to 3 stamina cards here. I'm going to probably opt for 2 stamina here, with the last one being a power card. So since power is going to be relevant here, and the only way we're going to train power is by also using speed, we need a little bit help there. We can argue to use 2 power legacies here. However, I think that the speed one is going to be important in order for us to reach the 1200 speed there consistently, as well as the power one. We're going to supplement that with a Rise Shower power card, since she also gives us Swinging Maestro plus firm conditions, which we both want in this build specifically for the upcoming Libra Cup. So I think that is a good choice to make. So we're going to choose Narita Brine here. As for one legacy side, we are going to use this Simile Rudolph. She has good uniques to inherit, plus I think she has 6 in power stat here, and a little bit of long and turf, which is fine. And for the borrowed legacy side, I found this Oguri cap to be very fitting. She is going to bring us 9 stars in speed and a lot of long distance sparks, so we're going to take that. Also, the Triumphant Pulse unique skill from Oguri is something we would also like to get. Alright, and this is our setup. As for the support cards here, we will going to choose the Riko, our MLB Kita-san, our SSR Biko Pegasus, also at MLB, solely because this card gives the most training effectiveness for speed. I could also replace Biko Pegasus for the special weak card, this card here, to get Gourmand. If I'm going to run Pace Chaser, at least I have a chance to get another gold skill here, which I don't think I need, so that's why we choose to go for the Biko Pegasus, because the cooldown skill is something we can also get from this free Majiro McQueen, as well as a Rise Shower that we're going to snag from the friends list. Here it is. And she also gives Swinging Maestro plus firm conditions, which is really cool. We also use the Manhattan Cafe. It's a SR card that I think a lot of people might have, and is the next best card for long runners, since it does have long straightaways here. So that might be something we can also make use of. So with that said, this is about 40 race bonus, in case you're wondering. Yeah, let's see how it goes.
翼さあ出発する強いいだろう 行くぞ。筆いいだろう。始めるぞ。さあ始めるぞ。つば始めるぞ。すべてああ少しいいだろう。少しついああ狩りの時が来た。
注目の一番人気。
いい勝利の足だ。翼が折れんかぎいいだろう。行くぞ。少し勝つには油断は行くぞ。力ああ少しや いいだろお願いします強くいいだろ気がみあ狩りの時が来た
ここは負けられない一番人気。
面白いレース少し休めばなんとかなる仕方が少し休めばなんとかなる狩りの時が来た狩り尽くす仕切り直しだつ始めるぞお願いします勝つ
合体技の練習だ
すべてはいいだろ少しや力が す
張り切っていこ
熱くたぎってくる。地位は筋肉踊る。戦いの始まりだ。
ここは負けられない1番人気12番成田ブライアン。
実力は完全。
面白いレースだ。少しや力か。少し休めばなんとかなる。
う張り切っていこ
力か。少し狩りの時が来た。
注目の1番人気17番成田ブライアン。
実力は完全に上位ですね。
面白いレースだ。油断は命。お願いします。強くなるほど果ても見え。だが今力がみなぎる。さあ始めるぞ。勝つん狩り誰でもいい。狩り尽くす。
う。たまりませんね
気がみお願いします。
合体技の練習だ。
気がみお願いします。少し行くか。力がみなぎる。 全ては戦いで力を振るう。
気合は十分です。始めましょう。
勝つには力が必要だ。
合体技の練習だ。
ズバ行くぞ。誰でもいい。私をか地位は気に食うる。
ここは負けられない。
面白いレースだ。力
合体技の練習だ。
少し休めばなんとかなる。
お願いします。
狩りの時が来た。
ここは負けられない一番人。
面白いレースだ。誰でもいい。地位は気に食う。借り尽くす。油断はいいいだろう。
お願いします。
少し休む。力が気がみ し休む。力が誰でもいい。
注目の一番人気。
いいぞ、勝利の足だ。熱くたぎってくる。翼が折れん限り鳥は飛び続ける。さらに高く遠くへ。お願いします。地位は気に
注目の一番人気。
面白いレースだ。少し休めばなんとかなる。翼が折れ
張り切っていこ
少し休めばなんとかなる。しか少し休めば行くぞ。少し休めば誰でもいい。狩りの時が来た。狩り尽くす。こんなもんだろ。生半可な 気が満ち満ちている。
張り切っていこ
少し休めば。ああ、しからか少し行くか。しからか少し休めば。しか少し休めばなんとかな。始めるぞ。すべてを立て。いいだろう。少し休めば。誰でもいい。
注目の一番人気。
面白いレースだ。油断はいない。強くなる。
お願いします。
誰でもいい。
注目の一番人気。
面白いレースだ。気が満ち。
張り切っていこ
誰でもいい。
注目の一番人気。
面白いレースだ。狩りの時が来た。地位は気にくれる。狩り尽くす。
チームキングの勝利よ。
少し休めばなんとかなる。狩りの時、
ここは負けられない。
面白いレースだ。勝つには力。
合体技の練習だ。
誰でも
ここは負けられない。
面白いレースだ。翼が折れん。
気合は十分です。始めましょう。
狩りの時が。
注目の3番。
面白いレースだ。